I am so excited to share this with you. I'm having a sit down coffee time with Kevin. So, Kevin and I have been chatting over 3 years. Again, what brought us together was the Montana beekeeping course, the master's program. So, Kevin and I chatted about that. I think you reached out just before you were starting to see
Yes,
what it was all about. So, we had a conversation and a little connection. So, Kevin, tell me where you're located and all that good stuff, and tell me a little bit about you.
sure. Well, as I said earlier, I'm delighted to be here on this coffee chat. It's sort of an interesting way of sharing some information. My name obviously is Kevin Dolan. I am from Scotland. I emigrated to Canada in 1980, and I've worked in agriculture for 45 years, I guess, mainly in pig agriculture. So we're located near Woodstock, Ontario, so southwestern Ontario, sort of between Stratford and Woodstock. So if viewers are from other parts of the world, it's sort of between Detroit and Toronto. And we moved on to the small farm in 1987. And since 2015, we've been keeping bees here. Um, the reason that I decided to keep bees was, as I said, I was involved in pig agriculture, mostly piglets, young pigs. So I really enjoyed the genetics, the raising, and all that stuff. And so I had some pigs on my own farm. But the job I had, I was acting as an agricultural consultant to pig farmers. And because of new biosecurity rules, I could not have pigs on my own farm and go into other producers' farms from a biosecurity standpoint. So I stopped having pigs on the farm and I looked around for something that would be similar to pigs, would have a genetic component, a production component, and a livestock management component. And a friend of mine at the time said, you should get bees. So
Mm.
we got bees. And we started off mistakenly going treatment free because it sounded fantastic. You know, the Bond method, live and let die, no pesticides, insecticides, whatever, chemicals. And that appealed to me until all my bees died. And they did that for 3 years in a row. I learned an awful lot, but my wife told me we could not spend any more money on bees. I then, it's like reading the package instructions. If all else fails, look at the instructions. So I started taking a beginner's beekeeping course at the University of Guelph, which was fantastic. I got involved with the Ontario Beekeepers Association at that time, which has been fantastic.
Good.
So we've two apiary locations, one here on our home farm
Interesting.
and one down in a gravel pit about 5 miles away, which gives us isolation for queen rearing and that kind of thing.
Perfect.
Our primary focus is honey production. So we have 15 to 20 honey production hives at home and 15 to 20 approximately at the other location.
Wonderful.
And then the balance is nucleus colonies. So we're really interested in nucleus colony management and production. So we've been selling honey since 2015 from our operation, and most of it is into specialty shops, coffee shops, wine and cheese shops, microbreweries, that type of thing. And we kind of are slowing down a little bit on honey production because my plan was, I retired 2 years ago, was to ramp up the business. And I suddenly found that was a lot of work. So we're going to stick around 50 colonies, give or
Wicked.
take. But the beekeeping keeps me busy
Full
pretty
time.
well. Yeah, pretty well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How cool is that to be able to retire to bees? That's a dream.
It was fantastic. It really is. And to have them really, I can look out my window now and see a dozen hives sitting in the snowbanks.
I
And
know.
I really enjoy that. I love that.
Okay. What is the name of your apiary?
Glen Isla Farm Honey. And we have a Facebook page. That's where you would see anything. So
Okay.
Glen Isla, Glenisla.
Okay.
And the reason for that name is, so a glen in Scotland is a valley, and the Isla is the river that runs through the valley. So that's why it's called Glen Isla. And I started farming there in Scotland, in
Okay.
Glen Isla. And so just to give you an idea, the famous whiskey Glenmorangie or Glenfiddich is named after the valley, the glen, that the river Fiddich runs through. So that's why it's called Glenfiddich.
So here's a question for you. What was there a big difference in your beekeeping practice in Scotland as opposed to when you moved to Ontario?
Well, I was 14 at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
So I was being mentored by two gentlemen who were fantastic to me, taught me how to hunt and fish, and they also had bees, and so I would help them out with the bees. We didn't have any Varroa.
Okay.
I wouldn't have even known what that was at the time. But when I obviously in Canada, that was the first nightmare that we encountered.
Yeah. Okay.
The second would have been swarming,
So
but
brings it to my next question.
yep.
Varroa. So obviously in Newfoundland, I don't have to deal with Varroa yet. I mean, I hope it never ever arrives here, but who knows? I think eventually it will. What's your Varroa counts and how is your Varroa population now in Ontario?
Um, in our apiaries, we do alcohol washes, usually monthly, and we are seeing 1 to 2 mites per 300 bees. We see obviously higher than that at certain times, but we've gone to a fairly strict organic acid programs where we use oxalic acid vaporization,
Okay.
and I will use Apivar. There's a new Apivar application paste come out, so I'm going to look at that. But I've not used Apivar for 2 years. I will use Apivar this year. And then in the summertime, our biggest problem is treating mites when honey supers are on. And I don't want to pull honey supers off to vaporize, so I either vaporize with the honey supers on, or I don't use oxalic acid vaporization. But I will use Formic Pro. Formic Pro to me is a superb tool.
Yeah.
And Tom Nolan and the Nod people, of course, are right in our backyard here in
I
Ontario. So
love Tom. Love
Tom
Tom.
is
Every
great.
expo I go to, I have to connect with Tom. Very educational. They're very informative with how to do Formic Pro. And you know what? I don't know if I should say this out loud. If Varroa ever came here in Newfoundland, I think that would be my first go-to.
Well, it's one of the tools. I really believe in IPM, like integrated pest management, because everybody's thinking oxalic acid is the golden or the gun, that we're going to conquer everything. It is a fantastic product, but overuse of anything is no good. So
Yeah.
I hope you don't get Varroa in Newfoundland, but if you do, there's a wealth of experience across North America.
Yes, exactly.
So back to Varroa. Yeah, I've already got some winter losses in my hives because I had to go in and feed and check, and I have 3 colonies that I have to take out of the apiary once the snow's down. I can get at them, but they will have Varroa in them, I'm sure. But going into the fall, they were weak. They weren't strong enough, and every year I say I'm going to combine them, and I never do. And then come springtime, I say, I should have combined those. I'll never learn. But I'm not sure that I can say we're conquering Varroa. I think we've got them at a manageable level that we kind of know what we're looking for. And I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah.
I'm also the president of our local bee association, the Middlesex Oxford Elgin Beekeepers Association. We have a website. If you search MOEBA, Middlesex, you'll get it. We've got a wealth of information on a whole bunch of stuff there. And so we do an overwinter survey of our members, and there's around 1,000 hives on it. And our winter loss survey, most of the losses came from Varroa and starvation and queen problems. A lot of people's hives were going into the winter queenless and they didn't know about it. Well, I mean, a colony is just going to dwindle over winter with no queens. So by no means is Varroa not an issue. It is a major issue.
Absolutely.
But we have some good tools.
So what are you guys hearing about tropy? Is that kind of hitting Ontario like through conversations? Are people, because you know what, Maggie yesterday when I had a chat with her, she had says, you know what, I can still go into a bee club And when I say tropicalex, like people have no idea what I'm talking about. There's like blank faces. So has it reached conversations in your bee clubs and within the Ontario like area as far as you know?
Well, we had our AGM in December, and the agenda was we had some really good speakers talking on tropicolaps, and I can't remember, there was one famous US researcher, I can't remember his name, but he gave a great presentation. It is big talk here, but interestingly, you should ask the question at the local bee level. So we just put together our schedule, and we had an executive meeting the other day, and I said, do you think we should bring up the subject of tropicolaps so everybody knows how to spell it, never mind know what it is? And people were saying, yeah, I think we should. So we haven't, at the local level, I mean, we're talking mostly hobbyist beekeepers. It's not a big issue because people don't know about it.
Exactly.
So I think we're going to definitely do a bit of education as much as we can on that. One of the things I am delighted to see is a North American bee strategy that is incorporating continental, North America. It's probably one of the only things we can seem to agree on these days. But it makes sense to me that we pull together because we have a border, and bees don't like borders; they don't care.
No.
So that to me is encouraging that we've got some of the best minds in the world trying to help us prevent this mite from coming to our shores.
Yeah. So we all have to come together. And myself and Maggie had that conversation. And I asked her, I was like, okay, so we're talking about people getting queens from wherever. Like, should that kind of slow down, or, should there be rules that like not to bring queens into your area or package bees into your area? And she had said to me, it hasn't really reached that point yet, but who knows? That's something that we should probably be considering. In your area, like if you needed to get bees or if you wanted to get a fancy queen, where would you go? Like, would you consider ordering it from across, borders, or would you keep local?
That's a big question,
It
and
is.
it's very political today. I have bought queens from the Ukraine, I've bought them from California, I've bought them from Hawaii, like not many, a few when I'm trying to increase my genetic diversity. But mostly I've gone back to buying Buckfast genetics in Ontario. The University of Guelph and a couple of other beekeepers have that stock. So I've been using that. But one of the things this year, one of our goals in our own operation, small scale, is to produce our own queens because I want to be sustainable. And when I need a queen, I need it. I can't go out and run 2 hours I just don't have the time. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I will produce, or we will produce our own queens sustainably. The local bees adapt better to the local area.
Right.
Generally speaking, I would agree with, but what is local? Is local Ontario? Is it Manitoba and Ontario? So to me, it's if you've got decent queens that you evaluate yourself for temperament, honey, whatever is important to you, Varroa hygienic behavior. I really love buying queens from people who do that. So in Ontario, we have the ORBS program, which is a group of queen breeders who really focus on traits, and they've been breeding hard for this Varroa hygienic behavior. So I will buy from them because I want to support them, but also I do like the idea of genetics. Personally, I believe genetics is our solution to Varroa
Yes.
long term, because chemical treatments aren't. They're a tool we can use to manage, but long term, we need something better. So, queen rearing, I mean, as I said, I'm taking the Montana course starting on Monday, and I'm doing that because I want to get more in-depth biology understanding of the process, larval development, mating flights, all that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. So because that'll help us when we actually start grafting in May. That's probably when we'll start grafting in late May. Drones are around late April, so we want a month to let those drones mature and get going, and then we'll start grafting.
Wow. I kind of put this out on Facebook. I'm doing that dude program from
Right.
Penn State. Oh my goodness. Like we did study drones, touched on it in Montana, the whole program. But this is just all drones. And like I've only had 2 sessions and I've learned so much about drones just in those 2 sessions. So I'm looking forward, like this goes right up until September. So I
Wow.
cannot wait to hear about it. And I know, you know what? I think Marla Spivak, she had a what about the drones? Well, they're huge, obviously. That's what gives
Mhm.
most of the genetics diversity and stuff when they go out and make queens.
I am fascinated with drones. I read a paper recently about drones basically do nothing except mate.
Oh,
And I don't
exactly.
believe that personally. I think they do a lot. So anyway, I started digging and I found a paper on the thermal regulation, some of the other things. So I love to dig more deeply into that one. So I hope I can get onto that Penn State
I'm
program.
really enjoying it. Robin Underwood is the instructor. And like just even different papers we've had, like it's so amazing and things that you never ever link. But like the strength of the colony obviously produces better drones. The diet, pollen
Mhm.
produces better drones. And they're even talking about the different ages of drones when they're best for like
Right.
sexual maturity and
Yep.
the sperm production. And it just opened my eyes so much. And I'm only in session number 2. Have you seen the drone congregation area?
Yeah, where we set swarm traps, it's usually on field lines and field edges and really natural places. And I've seen a couple of those above the those areas. So yeah,
So is it
fascinating.
true? Like, I understand, like they were really up high in the air, which I love because I don't like watching things mate. So I'm cool with having it way up in the air. But can you see the congregation? Can you see actually all those drones in that area from ground?
Yeah, well, I could. I mean, I
Okay.
could see, and I mean, I could see there were bees, and I thought it was a swarm, and then I thought, what is that?
How
And that's when
cool.
I clued in. Yeah, so they can be anywhere from 15 feet off the
Yes.
ground to 100 feet, and I think they were about the height of the trees, and those trees would have been 50 feet.
So I'm really happy to hear you're like, was it you said the president of your bee club?
Yeah, the
Oh,
local bee association. We have 100 members approximately,
wow.
and we meet 6 times a year, spring and fall, and then we have a summer day field meeting. But we we try and focus on education,
Yep.
and so we have speakers, and we have Albert De Vries is our first speaker this year. He's a Canadian Honey Council member, but Albert has 1,000 colonies. He is an active member of our association. He's going to be talking about running a commercial apiary and its parallels to small scale beekeeping.
Okay.
We're probably going to have Ian Stepler on
I love
through a
you.
webinar. We try and address small scale beekeeping, hobbyist beekeepers, because at the local level, that's who we deal with. That's who comes to our club meetings. There's a large social aspect to it,
Yeah.
but there's also a good beekeeping thing. And beekeepers, they love to talk. Just talk briefly
Yep.
about some of the stuff we're doing in our own, excuse
Yes.
me, in our own apiary, because
Yep.
it may be a little different. So we try and keep about 5 to 6 hives on 2 pallets, 3 pallets in one specific area, because we like to produce small batches of honey, and we like to label them for the area they've come from. So we'll have between 4 and 6 colonies, and then we'll have one colony. It may be a nuke, or it may be a brood chamber full size, but that is not a honey production hive. That is a resource colony.
Okay.
We use that colony to produce drawn brood comb, spare queen, to boost brood, to do whatever we need to. And if a queen dies, we may move that resource hive to become the production hive
That's
and
like
use
your
the
spare
queens.
battery. It's like your spare battery.
100%. And that has made such a huge difference to our sustainability. It-
Good.
because in the first number of years, we would be robbing colonies to do,
Yes.
to build up for queen rearing. We'd be taking brood out, and then we'd wonder why we only got 50 pounds of honey out of those hives. Because I've learned the hard way: you can produce bees or you can produce honey. You can't do both with the
Yeah.
same colony. So we're doing that. The other project that we're heavily involved with this year is Broodminder sensors. So we are going to have a lot more sensors in our hives. We had them all in last year, and the information that's coming from those sensors today is fascinating, very interesting.
I'd love to know
I'm
more
trying
about
to,
that.
yeah, I'm trying to understand how to actually use them, but it tells me right now the temperature in a couple of hives is on the mantle is between 8 and 9 degrees Celsius in one hive,
That's pretty
and
interesting.
another hive is 25 degrees Celsius. And I don't understand the difference other than the one colony is super strong and it's probably got brood rearing going on,
Yeah.
and the other colony is mostly normal. So I'm part of a broodminder group in Scotland, actually, that we talk virtually. And in Scotland right now, their mantle temperatures are 8 to 9 degrees Celsius, same as here. It's
Okay.
amazing. They're 500 miles north of us,
Mhm.
and their climate's different, but the bees are bees,
Yes, exactly.
pretty well. So the broodminders, we're getting some scales to put underneath our hive so we can correlate hive weights.
Yes.
Notice when we're starting to see a nectar flow, and then through the winter, I want to see them depleting resources, etc. But the sensors are fantastic because when my bees start into brood production, the temperature rises to 35 degrees, and every day I see it at 35 degrees, I know
Easy.
that colony is queen right, they're raising
Yeah.
brood. Things are pretty good. I don't have to interfere in that colony too much. Whenever I see that dropping, I've either lost the queen or something's going on. So I then will inspect for sure. But anyway, so that whole broodminder thing, I'm not doing a sales pitch here, but I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Point you just raised in regards to not having to go into your hives. So you don't have to break the proper seal. You don't have to let in draft. You know what's going on and you know that hive is doing well just by the readings that you're getting. So that
Yeah.
itself sold me. Yeah, so let's talk about the broodminder towards the end of the summer. What does it tell
Okay,
you?
well, mostly it tells me if the hive is queen right. It also tells me if the brood is being reared because the temperature is bang on. And
Okay,
when
just I'm gonna pause you there. How in the heck does it tell you that it's queen right?
because they're raising brood, if the queen wasn't there, she wouldn't be laying. So within 10 days to 15 days, the temperature will go out of the brood range down because there's no brood to take care of anymore.
So how do you know that the queen is laying then?
Because the larvae are the nurse bees are feeding the brood and keeping the temperature at 35 degrees Celsius. But
So
the other thing
temperature is a
is
big thing with broodminder.
temperature is huge. It is so when the bees are going to swarm, they start to exercise their thoraxes and they get their muscles all engaged, and the temperature in the hive goes up 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, and it's called a swarming event, and you can see it on your graph. So if you see that happening, it's
Yes.
maybe too late. So what you're trying to do is watch for any changes in temperature above the norm on the graph.
How?
And so I'm moving to a cellular way of getting data because right now I have to go around as a Bluetooth signal with my phone and download the data.
Yes.
So with this cellular hub, it's going to upload all the data every 10 minutes and send it to my computer. So
Isn't
I
that
can be in Hawaii and look at my hives and see what's happening.
how precise?
They make tons of videos on the Broodminder site. It explains all of this, how all this works, what to look for when you're queenless and if you're being robbed. They've also got a bee radar that goes on the front of the entrance, and it tells you how many bees are coming in and out.
I think that's interesting.
It's interesting.
Yep.
It's interesting. Does it mean anything?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, during nectar flows with the scales, you're going to see increases of 5 to 6 kgs per day. And then overnight, that'll drop because the bees are dehydrating that nectar. So the weight goes up and then it goes
That's
down and
yeah.
then it goes up and it goes down. But you can see the nectar flow, you know, when it stops and when you start to be worried about robbing. So without going into the hive, but over an annual, like 12 months, you'll be able to look back because it stores all this data and graphs it all and tell when your brood production starts in the spring, when it stops in the fall. You can see swarming. To me, it's fascinating.
So right now, if you look at one of your sensors, what's the temperature in there?
Now it is 8 degrees in one hive Celsius and 24.69 in the other. That's the big hive.
Just so people understand, 8 degrees, that's not in the cluster. That's like the outside. Like
The sensor is sitting on top of the frames
Okay.
and I'm hoping it's above the cluster. I know on the hive that's 25 degrees, it's right bang on the middle of the cluster, like on top. Single brood chambers.
Yeah. So there was a misunderstanding with some, I guess, people that when we tell people, yes, you know what, they shake thermoregulation and it increases the temperature of the hive, and that's how in the hive, so that's how they survive. Some people think it's like a room like we have, like the temperature is all around the hive, 25 degrees or 30 degrees. That's not the case. So I think that's a great point that 8 degrees, that's the outside. I mean, what's your outside temperature now?
Minus 21.
That says just look how much heat they're giving off,
Yes.
not just even outside the cluster.
While the cluster is heating the cluster, if it doesn't have to heat the space around it because it's nice and tight and insulated, then it doesn't consume as much resources.
Exactly. So when we started, before we actually pressed record, you showed me this beautiful picture or plaque that you created. Let's have a look at it. I want
Okay.
everyone to see it because you worked darn hard for this, and that's awesome. Look at that, my friends.
I'm quite
Congratulations.
quite proud of that. Thank you.
Yeah. So part of the master's program, you do have to do a research paper. Tell me what you did your paper on.
Okay, and I'm delighted to talk about that. Uh, as you said, it is part of the program, and you can choose what you like. And in working with Jerry Bromenshenk, one of the guys who is the one of the gurus of that
I love
program,
Jerry. Love Jerry.
decided I wanted to do something about pollen trapping because in Ontario there's a lot of people trap pollen, and I would ask them about it. Is there any detrimental effects? Oh, no, 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 no. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write a paper on pollen trapping. So his name, pollen trapping, implications of pollen trapping with its effects on foraging and honey production.
Interesting.
So I did a search of the scientific literature and focused on 7 papers that dated from 1974 to the present that talked about pollen trapping. And then I interviewed 2 commercial pollen trappers in Canada, one from Corbicula Pollen in British Columbia. They run about 500 pollen traps a year. And then Albert de Vries, whom I've mentioned, he runs about 800 pollen traps. So I interviewed both of them with a series of questions. And what I came to the conclusion was that there's quite a conflict between what the science says
Yeah.
about pollen trapping and what commercial beekeepers say about pollen trapping. So that was the question I kind of wrestled around with in the paper. And at the end of the paper, which was published in the American Bee Journal there, and at the end there's recommendations, my recommendations based on the findings from the science and the commercial producers. And in fact, there is agreement between the commercial producers and the science, although they won't tell you that. One of them said to me, because one of the big findings is that honey yield is down when you're pollen trapping, because what happens is the foraging bee force gets a signal pheromonally that we need more pollen because there's not enough coming in. So they then switch from going out foraging for nectar and they go foraging for pollen.
Yes, there we
So
go.
if your foraging force for nectar goes down, something suffers and it's honey yield.
Yeah.
But if you do it for a short period of time, 3 to 4 weeks, during the height of nectar flow and pollen, you seem to be able to get away with it without hurting brood production longer term. Short term, it does affect it.
Yeah.
But they seem to be able to compensate for that going forward. Now, a lot of people put their traps on when they put the honey supers on in the spring and take them off when they take the honey supers off in the fall. So they're essentially trapping the whole season. I could not figure out how they get away with that until I started looking at the pollen traps themselves. There's no work done on how efficient pollen traps are. And by efficiency, I mean the bees come in, they go through the hole, it scrapes the pollen off their legs, and the pollen gets dropped onto a tray. The tray is then collected. So the bees go up into the hive, they've got no pollen. So you would think, well, that's not going to work because they need pollen to produce food to feed larvae. So brood production would go down, be a mess. So I did a lot more digging and found out that pollen traps are actually very inefficient.
Mm,
So not 100% of the pollen comes off,
yeah.
not 50% of the pollen comes off. Nobody really knows except how much pollen is trapped or taken out the traps. So doing a deeper dive into the research, I came to the conclusion that pollen traps are anywhere from 10% efficient to 60% efficient. And there's only been one study where they actually counted and measured the pollen that came off. Some of the fascinating things I found was the bees will change their physiology as they go into the pollen trap. They squeeze their legs together, they squeeze tight, and then they go through the pollen. They go through the trap and keep the pollen. But pollen loads are smaller when they're doing that. So pollen production goes down. Another fascinating thing was pollen trapping makes more efficient pollinators. So the bees are going out and pollinating more effectively when they're being trapped because they need to bring in more pollen. So they have to go out and get more pollen.
Okay.
The efficiencies of the trap is why commercial producers say we really don't see much effect with brood production. And spending the day with Albert de Vries was super interesting because we were carrying an incubator. He had this incubator full of like 40 queen cells because we would go in and we'd open up, pull the pollen trap, no pollen. Albert says, that's queenless because there's no pollen. So we popped the queen cell in. And that's something that he said you've really got to be careful of because if you have a queenless colony or a queen stuck in the colony because the colony is swarmed, it's a mess. So there's certain things you have to look for. The other thing about, other than just timing, when you time, how long you trap, the other thing is the strength of the colony you use for trapping. You want to have 4 to 5 broods, frames of brood in May. So that will build into a really strong hive come June, July, June for sure. Anything less than that, don't put a pollen trap on. So strength of colony, queen, it's got to be queen right, obviously. It's got to be strong. And it will produce, it will trap pollen. And the economics of pollen trapping are pretty lucrative. Like pollen is, you can get around $9 a pound for wet, undried pollen. And your yields on a pollen trap are between £5 and £15. So it is a decent piece of income for a beekeeper who needs to make some income, which is very important if you're a commercial beekeeper.
Valuable information like that you got from your research paper. Like so many beekeepers would benefit from hearing this. I had a lady on the other day and she was like, I don't trap pollen because I don't want to take it from my bees. And I just think is an area where we can all benefit from learning from. And maybe even, you know what, good for you. Maybe we need to get better at pollen traps. I mean, obviously we don't know.
That was one of my suggestions for the research was if we had a pollen trap that we could monitor incoming flow, incoming pollen, and link it with brood development to ensure we're not compromising it. And there are some nice pollen traps out there, but remember, they're physiological. They're a barrier, a physical barrier at the front of the hive entrance. You're stopping bees. And so one of the other things I found was that if you're going to pollen trap in an apiary, you need to put pollen traps on every colony, weak or not, because they drift. They'll go to a colony, they can't get in because the trap, they'll go to another colony that doesn't have one. So it can cause all kinds of issues. And if they're not, the pollen traps aren't cleaned out, and if they're not cleaned out, like the pollen taken, every 4 to 5 days, depending on how damp your climate is, the pollen rots or it molds and it's useless. So you have to keep it clean. The pollen trap can also get plugged with bee pats and drones. Drones can't get in and out if the pollen trap has just got straight holes. OAC, so the Ontario Agricultural College, they developed a pollen trap in the late 60s, which has become kind of standard across North America. And it's got drone entrances and exits, so the drones can get in and out.
Yeah, well, that's talking about drones have to get in and out.
They sure do, and they play an important role in the colony.
So that's fabulous. Just think about what a contribution you've made to the beekeeping world. Like that's awesome. And American Bee Journal featured it. Guys, head out, buy your copy. This is Kevin. He's the creator of it. He's the author. That's wonderful, Kevin. Wow.
Yeah, great. Well,
Yeah.
it's fascinating to talk about it. I've been asked to present it at a couple of bee associations, and it's going to be published in a Scottish beekeeper group as well, which is
Wow.
close to my heart, of course.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so there's real interest in it because
Yeah.
pollen is the only source of protein for bees.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry must have been very excited talking to you about this.
Yeah, he was, and he was very helpful
Yeah.
because we were talking a bit about it, and he said, "Well, you need to balance off the science with some commercial stuff." So that I thought, oh,
Yeah.
and he was very helpful in getting me the British Columbia people. And the fascinating thing about anything to do with bees is you meet some brilliant people
Yeah.
who are so giving of their time and energy.
Yeah.
It's really great, and that's why I like to, if I'm asked to talk or say anything, I'm happy to do so because people are very generous with
Yes.
information.
Yeah. That's good. I don't know about you, but when I think of Jerry, the first time I've met him, he started talking about, I don't know if you remember this, how they trained bees to go into
Yes.
landmines.
Yeah.
You remember
Yeah.
that? Did he tell you
Yeah.
that story too? I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh.
The whole master beekeeping program came about for me because I really wanted a more in-depth look at the biology. And I tried to get into Cornell's program and it was fully booked. I'm glad I didn't get into it because the Montana program, in my opinion, for me, it was better. I have a friend, a local neighbor who's taken the Cornell program and he's enjoying it, but he said that the stuff we're doing is more exciting.
So everybody have a look at the Montana beekeeping program. These are two graduates right here, and there's many more. You know what? I think I'm after recruiting maybe at least 6 people.
I agree with you that the Montana program it dives into the biology and ecology of bees.
Yeah.
Does it make you a better beekeeper? I think it does. But beekeeping itself, managing bees, is different than understanding the biology. But they complement each other because you can understand more of what's actually happening.
Yes.
Whereas the beekeeping side is more the physical. A lot of guys in our association who are very accomplished beekeepers, but they don't understand the deeper parts of biology, and that's fine because that they don't want to. But that's kind of what I like to see is understand a little more deeply.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for spending this time with me and having a little chat about all your interesting research and your experiences and all about your bees. So this will go on YouTube, and I'm also going to be putting it on our site. But again, thanks again. Do you have anything you want to say just before we leave?
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. And all I would like to say is don't get too serious and have fun keeping bees.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. You have a good day, okay?
Thank you, and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.